Guys, please check your audio and video settings, please. Guys, everyone, please check your audio and video settings. Yes, boss. Listen, today onwards, we are going to see annotation-driven Spring programming. Listen, guys, we should learn fundamentals of annotation in core Java itself. No problem. You have not learned, not a issue. I have taken one common topic and I kept that common topic in the YouTube. I think 2-3 months back. So just to go through this, same thing I have placed here. So everyone, please watch this. So you will get why we should learn annotation, why annotations came. So a lot of basics are related to annotations you can see in this particular video, boss. Right. Yeah, now listen. We can use annotations for different purposes. Please watch this video to know why annotations came. Okay, how to work with annotation. Don't miss it. If you see it, you will get the clarity about the basics of the annotation so that we can link that knowledge while dealing with the Spring annotations. Now listen, we can use annotation for different purposes. Annotations to give guidance to compiler. They will not do anything at runtime, boss. They're just there to guide the compiler. For example, you take @ override. This annotation will not be recorded into .class file. It is just there giving guidance to compiler. Hey compiler, don't treat it as a direct method of the current class. Always treat it as a inherited and overridden method. Yes, boss. It will not do anything at runtime. It will just to alert the compiler at compilation. Okay, telling that, hey compiler, don't ever take this method as direct method. Always take it as inherited and overridden method. Suppress warnings. This is also, if any deprecated methods are used, typecastings are not used, generics are not used while working with collections, then you will get warnings. No, I want to tell to compiler, I'm intentionally using, don't give me warnings. Then we have a @ suppress warnings. They will not be recorded into .class file. They are just there giving guidance to compiler. Annotations for documentation. If you look at Java API documentation, boss, okay. If you look at Java API documentation, you will get highlights, boss. You take any predefined class, string docs. This is API documentation. See, since, see also, if you look at the methods, parameters, throws, since, all these are highlights, boss. All these are highlights. In the source code of string.java, they will be given as a documentation annotation. We have @since, @c, @throws, @param. We have a lot of annotations, boss. You want to see that? Java is open source. C drive, program files, Java. You take any version, JDK 1.8, or you can take latest also. src.zip, open with WinRAR. Open with WinRAR, Java dot lang dot string dot Java. Here is my view files. Observe, this is a source code, guys. Here documentation comments are started and highlights. See, @author, @C, @C. This will give C also. This will give author name. Okay, @since will give. These are documentation annotation. Must be used along with the API documentation comments. These are documentation comments. You know that Java support 3 types of comments: single line, multi-line, documentation comment, /**, lastly /*/. They are called documentation comments, boss. See, @param, 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 @throws. So these are documentation annotations. See this? Must be used along with the documentation comments. Must be used along with what? Documentation comments. This is compulsory to generate highlights in API documentation. That's cool, guys. Next one. Annotations for marking. Annotations for marking. These annotations are given to mark Java code with a special behavior. These annotations will be recorded into .class file, but they will tell to runtime environment, maybe container, maybe JVM, maybe server, to identify that code as a special code. @entity makes normal Java class as an entity class. @web servlet makes normal Java class as what? Servlet component. @service makes normal Java class as Spring Bean come service class. In future, we are going to see that. @component makes normal Java class as just service Spring Bean class, just service. So these are for marking purpose, boss. You are not a normal class, you are an entity class of Hibernate. You are not a normal class, you are a servlet component of servlet programming. These are called annotations for marking, boss. Next, we got annotations for dynamic code generation. This is very interesting, boss. By seeing that annotation, internally subclass for current class will be generated. And in that subclass, entire logic will be there to bring that special behavior. Entire logic will be there to add that special behavior. This annotation not only marks the code, but also generate dynamic code internally as in-memory Java code. Internally, listen, internally at runtime, one subclass will be generated. In that subclass, a lot of logic will be added to add special behavior. See this, @isab, @web service, @lookup, @proxy. All these are what? Annotations for dynamic code generation. See this, guys, @web service. It's ordinary Java code, guys. Ordinary Java methods. But to make Java class as web service, so much code is required, guys. But we don't write. Internally, one subclass will be generated for test service at what time? A runtime. So their methods will be overridden. Inside those methods, real code is required. Whatever code is required to make that one as what? Web service component will be generated. Are you listening my statement, guys? It looks like, oh, we made ordinary Java class as web service, but actual story is not there in our class. Actual story is happening in the dynamically generated in-memory class, guys. Dynamically generated subclass for this test service class. See this? Makes a test service class as web service because internally generates one in-memory class generated at JVM memory of the RAM as the subclass of test service class, And class contains lots of code to make logics as what? Web service logic. So it looks like it is ordinary methods and ordinary class, but entire web service behavior comes because of what? At runtime, dynamic in-memory class is generated as subclass of what? Current class. Okay, now I am linking with the Spring Boss. In Spring, annotation support is added from Spring 2.0 incrementally. From Spring 2.0 incrementally, annotation support is added, boss. So these are the various versions. In Spring 2.0, some annotations are added. I hope you are understanding what do you mean by incrementally. In each version, few annotations are added. 2.0, some annotations are added. 2.5, some other annotations are added. Okay. 3.x, some more annotations are added. 4.x, some more annotations are added. 5.x, some more annotations are added. At the same time, some Java config annotations are there which are given by JDK and JWE APIs. Remaining all annotations are given by Spring people, boss. Remaining all annotations are given by Spring people. Are you listening my statement, boss? Right. So at the rate required is there, na? Deprecated from, I think, 5.2. Deprecated and removed from 5.2. Yeah, I'll find out the exact version, but somewhere in the 5.1, 5.2, this annotation is removed. But we will study for knowledge sake, don't worry. So shall we start with now? See, boss, no list will be there anywhere. No list will be there anywhere. You have to gather. Okay. No list will be there anywhere. You have to gather or search in the internet. I spent time on API documentation. I gathered all these annotations. API documentations will be there, na? When you open any annotation, you will get, these are only core module annotations. I gathered through API documentation. API documentation. Suppose I'll tell how I gathered. You want to know? E-Dry. I think Spring Framework is there in what? G-Dry. Spring 4.5.2. 5.2. Otherwise, E-Dry. 5.3.1. Docs. Java Doc API. Index.html. Even documentation PDF given by Spring people never give. Yeah, API documentation, guys. API documentation. Control F. Don't search with @, just search with lookup. Lookup. See, annotation type lookup version 4.1. Like this we can gather, boss. Understanding my statement. Like this we can know in which version which annotations are there. Okay, boss. Now listen. @required. @required. Look at the latest version or 5.3 version. Is there any annotation called required, guys? Yes, see this required deprecated as of 5.1. It is 5.1 deprecated. Are you listening? Deprecated. Okay, first deprecated, then removed also, boss. Okay, so in latest version, there is no guarantee it will work because it is deprecated. So 1 minute. So we will give the number exact one. Yes. Okay, we'll say deprecated only, not the removed. Deprecated from 5.1. Yes, boss. Why it is given? First of all, we'll go for. You go for construct injection, guys. I have 3 param constructor. I must involve all 3 parameters in injection or not? Say something. I must involve all 3 parameters in injection. Otherwise, I will get error. Yes. Is there any such a rule for setter injection? Is there any such a rule for setter injection? Speak out. Is there any such a rule for setter injection, guys? No, I want to bring same rule for setter injection. Then we have to go for @required. See, it is applicable at what level, guys? It is applicable at what level? Method level. You cannot apply at field. You cannot apply at class level, interface level. I want everyone to watch that video, annotation fundamentals video without any failure. I want everyone, please watch that video, annotation fundamentals video, latecomers. Again, I am telling, again, I am giving for you people's sake. youtube.com/NareshIT was. youtube.com/NareshIT. Annotations by once again I am pasting here. Yes. Yes, only one video. These are annotation fundamentals.
There is a term called
which is related
metadata.
to core Java.
What do you mean by metadata, boss?
Yeah, deprecated
Data
one,
about data.
retention.
Either
This class will be recorded into .class file and there is a runtime activity.
Or gathering
Retention. I
more
explained all this retention at the rate target in the annotation fundamentals video. Target says at what level this annotation can be applied. Okay, retention says whether it will be recorded into .class file or not, whether runtime functionality is there or not. And as I said, every annotation is internally one interface, having parameters as the declaration of the methods. Having parameters as the declaration of the methods, boss. Okay, super, boss. While working with constructor injection, it is mandatory to involve all the params of constructor to participate in the injection process. Otherwise, we get error. In order to solve this problem, in order to, okay, to bring same effect, using set injection, we need to go for, to bring same effect, on the setter method of, on each setter method of, setter injection. We need to go for at the rate, what is that? At the rate required annotation. Yes. Deprecated from Spring 5.1. Deprecated from Spring 5.1. Okay. Asking to use Spring Bean lifecycle init method as alternate. Spring Bean lifecycle I'll discuss. Spring Bean lifecycle init method as alternate, okay? As alternate to bring the same effect. Spring Bean lifecycle init method as alternate to bring the same effect. Super, guys. So now let's take this, guys. Regular jars, guys. We don't need any special jars. Maven project. Say next. Maven hyphen archetype hyphen quick start. Maven hyphen archetype hyphen quick start. What is that, guys? IOC pros 14 NO. IOC pros 14 NO. At the rate is not allowed in the project name. Required annotation. Required NO. What's the default package, guys? com.nt.test. Save finish. com.nt.test. Regular jars, guys. We don't need any separate jars. Regular jars are sufficient. Don't think that we need to have a special jar file for it. Not required. Regular jar files are more than sufficient. As usually, change Java version to 14. Save it, guys. Save Maven update. Update the project. Done. Yeah. First, I will add latest version, boss. First, I will add latest version. mvnrepository.com. Spring context support 5.3.6. Yes. Wanted I'm adding latest version to show that it is not working in latest version. Yes, boss. Next. I'll take other packages as usually. Yeah, listen, guys. Initially, I will use more XML, less annotation. As each annotation I introduce, slowly, XML domination will reduce, Java annotation domination will increase. When I say annotation driven Spring programming, so initially it looks like more XML, less annotation. Slowly it looks like what? More annotations, less XML. Please, without... One by one, I have to introduce. Yes, boss. Now let's take this, because we cannot work with all annotations at a time. Now you will be confused, right? Okay. So come beans package com.nt.cfgs com.nt.cfgs com.nt.test, boss. Let me delete this, boss. Yes. New package. No, package is already there. New package class. New package, this one. So I can take anything, boss. I'm taking robo. Array, some name, not a problem. Class robo. If not interested, take what? Some article name, some XYZ. Yes. Private int ID. Robo will have ID. Private string name. Robo will have a name. Private string lab name. It is created by which lab? Okay. Double price. Okay, guys. So now to support setter injection, I need to have setter methods. Control plus shift plus yes. Alt plus shift plus yes R. Select setters. Yes, boss. Okay, to check whether they are injected or not. To check they are injected or not, I am taking toString method. Yes, boss. Trace, boss. Trace. End of the class. New other Spring Bean configuration file. Here is my application context.xml. Here is my application context.xml. Beans. Today, basic. Initially, no need of special namespaces. Yes, boss. Initially, I'll try to configure everything, boss. Bean ID robo class is equal to robo. Property name. If you select it, will come automatically, boss. Musaddiq, you just select it, automatically namespace will come. Okay, property name ID, but STS plugin is required. 1001. Okay, or 10,001, whatever it is. Property name, robo name, value, chitti. Lab. What is the lab, guys? Lab. Okay. Array something ISRO. That's fine. ISRO. I think ISRO is for satellites, na boss. ISRO is for satellites. Okay, let's go for DRDO. DRDA. Price. Value, some number. Done, guys. Yes, still I have not applied. I will show. Class, guys. Class. Required annotation test. Required annotation test. Create IOC container. Create IOC container. Class path XML application context. CTX is equal to class path XML application context of com/nt/cfz/ application context.xml. Okay, get bean robo is equal to ctx.getBean. What is that? Robo dot class. Robo dot class. Sysout robo. End of main method, end of class, guys. End of main method, end of class. Required annotation test, boss. Okay, required annotation test. Let's see now. Right now, all 4 values are kept and all 4 values are coming. Now I commented 2 values in the middle. Any issue, boss? Any issue? No issue. Because set injection is like that only, na? No, I want to have a restriction on set injection. That is it. I want to have a restriction. I want to have a restriction on. I want to have a restriction on set injection. ID and name is mandatory, boss. Maybe lab and price is optional, but ID and name is very much important. Compulsory. So now listen, I'll go to ID related setter method. On the top of it, it is applicable only at method level. Generally, we apply only on setter method. Yes, see this strike through effect means deprecated. ID and name is compulsory. Okay. This is a one thing, guys. And listen, one more thing you please observe. This annotation functionality is there. This annotation functionality is there in a separate class called required annotation bean post processor. There is a separate class called required annotation bean post processor. You must configure that class as a Spring Bean. Okay. Some annotation functionalities are given in a separate class called bean post processor. Some separate class called bean post processor. Okay, for every annotation, one bean post processor will be there. Okay, and you have to configure that class in order to get the functionality of that one, boss. Okay, here, please focus. Public class required annotation bean post processor. Required annotation bean post. Sir, you are taking bean class without ID. No problem. In XML driven configuration, when you take bean class without ID, fully qualified class name. What, guys? Fully qualified class name itself becomes bean ID. Fully qualified class name itself becomes what? Default bean ID. Default bean ID. No, you want to give some name, you can give. That's up to you. You want to give some name, you can give. Fully qualified means this entire name itself becomes default bean ID. This entire name itself becomes what? Default bean ID. But having lowercase letter. What is this? Not lowercase letter. So entire class name itself, fully qualified class name itself becomes a default bean ID, boss. Now listen. Now listen. Required annotation test. Required annotation test. Now observe. Property name is required for bean robo. Property name is required for bean robo. Why, sir? I said required. I said required. Come on. On beast is required. So I commented name and lab. For commenting lab, it is not giving error, but it is giving error for commenting name, boss. Did you realize that? Come on, guys. It is giving error for commenting name. Did you realize that, guys? So now I will keep it on. I will keep it on and I will comment this one. I'll comment lab only. Now you observe. Required annotation test. Am I getting any error, boss? Am I getting an error? Am I getting an error? No, I'm not getting any error. I hope you are understanding my statement, boss. Sir, why this strike through effect is coming? Why this strike through effect is coming? Strike through effect is coming because it is a deprecated. Why they have deprecated, sir? There should be some reason now why they have deprecated. Okay, now tell me, guys, you have to apply on each property related setter method separately, boss. This is very, very difficult. Come on. You have to apply on each property related setter method separately. Okay, that is very, very difficult to do that, boss. And moreover, setter injection is there to choose when you are not sure about injection is required or not required. So again, putting restriction on setter injection is really meaningless. Okay, if you want to put the real restriction like that, they are saying that in Spring Bean lifecycle, init method is there. Inside the init method, you apply the restriction. That's the one reason. Another reason. Listen. I'll give all the reasons. Another reason. It will check whether correct value is configured or not. Setter injection is enabled or not on the property. It will never check whether correct value is injected or not. For example, okay, I have given minus 1001. Is it going to stop me, guys? Right now I have kept value, boss, but do you think minus 1001 is a correct value? Is there any chance of having minus 1001, boss, as the robo ID? These are the two reasons that why they have deprecated. These are the two reasons why they have deprecated. But if you go to Bean lifecycle init method, which I am going to discuss in future, we can verify whether Bean properties are configured for injection or not. Okay, and we can also verify whether correct values are injected or not. We can also verify whether correct values are injected or not. Okay, now listen. Now I don't write this Bean post processor, guys. I don't write this Bean post processor. See, guys, even though annotation is applied, no effect. Even though annotation is applied, no effect. Sir, why effect will be there? You are not copying mandatory property. Okay, let me comment mandatory property. ID and name, these are the two properties, boss. Okay, now listen. Am I getting any error? No. That means entire functionality of the annotation is there in this class or not? Entire functionality of the annotation is there in this class or not? Come on. Entire functionality for like this, for every annotation. Suresh, slowly XML will be avoided. In that place, all annotations will come. It's an incremental process. You are not focusing, Mr. Suresh. I already given this statement. Yes, in annotation driven programming, still XML is required. In 100% code and Spring Boot, XML will be avoided completely. Initially, more XML, less annotation. Later, more annotation, less XML. But once we move to approach 3 and approach 4 of programming, no XML. Everything will be through annotation Java code. Everything will be through Java code. Now listen. One more thing I want to prove. I have not given any bean ID here. I have not given any bean ID here. Okay. So if you pass like this, it will be error. Instead of that, I will pass fully qualified class name. com.nt.beans.robo. com.nt.beans.robo. Let's see, guys. Property name is required. That means required annotation is working or not working. Okay, right now that is not important. So I remove the comment. When I remove the comment, yes, we are getting the values or not. So that means it is able to work with the default bean ID na, boss. It is able to work with the default bean ID na. Okay, now listen carefully. Sir, I have a question. I have taken same bean twice without bean ID. One is 1001, other one is chitty one. One is 1001, other one is chitty 1002, chitty 2. Okay, now two beans are there without bean ID. Then what happens? Fully qualified class name hash n for the first one 0, for the second one 1, hash 0 hash 1. You want to feel it? Let me make you people to feel it. Let me make you people to feel it. This is robo 1, guys. Here is robo 1. Copy these, guys. For the first one, you can take without hash 0. Second one hash, it's a 0 based index, boss. Hash 1. Here is my robo 2. Here is my robo 2. Done. Required annotation test. See, guys. See, coming or not coming. It is now taking default bean IDs, fully qualified class name hash n or not. N is 0 based index, boss. N is having 0 based index. So for the first one, giving 0 is optional. For the first one, first default bean ID, you can give 0 or you can give without 0. But second one, as usually 1, boss. Second one, as usually 1. Are you understanding? So this is also popular interview question. In XML driven Spring Bean configuration, what is the default bean ID? Array ID value is negative number because we didn't write. ID value is negative number. ID value is negative number because, oh, what is happening? ID value is negative number. Set ID, this one. Required annotation bean post processor. But we didn't comment na, boss. Mr. Pavan, at the rate required will not check. At the rate required will not check whether correct value given or not. It will check whether injection is done or not. That's a drawback why they have deprecated it. So shall I put all these things in the point of notes, guys? Shall I put all these things in the point of notes? Okay. So now all these are not required first of all. So here is what bean ID is equal to robo. Bean ID is equal to robo. Here also. Robo. Yeah, I'll give notes. Before that, let me put one more thing, boss. Let me put one more thing. Array, like this, I'm using 4-5 annotations. Let us, is everyone, check your Yogiraj Jaiswal, check your net connection. Like these 4-5 annotations. Writing bean post processor class for every, writing bean post processor class, bean post processor class. That means it will add functionality to annotation once bean class object is created. That's the reason it is called bean post processing. Post processing means which will be applying the facilities after bean object creation. That's why it is called post processing. Pre processing means before, post processing means after. The things that will happen after bean object creation is called bean post processor. Right. Let us assume I am using 4-5 annotations, boss. 4-5 annotations. Are you listening my statement, guys? 4-5 annotations. Yes. But I don't want to waste my time and energy to know the bean post processor class of each annotation and configuring them in what Spring Bean configuration file. So what is the alternate, sir? What is the alternate? What is the alternate? I'm commenting it. I'm importing one more namespace called context, guys. I'm commenting this. I'm import one more namespace called context, guys. Context colon annotation config. You write this annotation. You write this tag, guys. For 6-7 annotations, automatically bean post processor will be configured internally. You need not to do that. Are the same context namespace which we have used for properties file. Again, one more namespace. How we got beans namespace? Similarly, we have context namespace. Check it out. Activate various annotation to be detected in the bean classes. @required, @auto-void, post construct, pre-destroy, resource, @web service ref, @isab, @persistence context, @persistence unit. Okay, @persistence unit. All these annotations will be activated by internally configuring the relevant bean post processor. You need not to write each bean post processor for these annotations separately. See, guys, I'm not talking anything great. I'm just talking those things that is there in the documentation. You only observe this. Required, auto-void, post construct, these things. Now you observe. Now you observe. Required annotation test, boss. I commented this 1001. I should get error. Not coming. Why, sir? Array, they have deprecated now. Somehow they are, it is not working. This context colon annotation config is not working in the latest version. Move to 5.0 version. Please move to 5.0 version, then headache will not be there. Super, boss. 5 point version is there, 5.3.6. So now let me give that version where 5.0 version, 5.0 version let me give. Because from 5.1 deprecated, 5.0.20 dot release. Five point zero point two zero dot release. Required annotation test, boss. Click on it. See this, guys. ID property is required. What is required? ID property is required. Now I am giving ID property here. Actually should, okay. Now I have given ID property. Now any error is coming, boss? No error is coming. So that means either this or this, which is good, guys. Context colon annotation config is good. Context colon writing each bean post processor is good. Writing each bean post processor is good, or context colon annotation config is good. No doubt context colon annotation config is good because one thing for 7 annotations. It is one thing for 7 annotations. Are you listening my statement, boss? Okay. Mr. K. Kshetra, same thing. If you don't inject, null will be there, you will get null pointer exception. Null will be there, null pointer exception will come if it is property type is object type. Yes, boss. So now listen. This annotation is applicable at method level, generally setter method level. Okay. This annotation functionality is defined. This annotation functionality is defined in relevant bean post processor class. Bean post processor class, that is required annotation bean post processor. So we should configure that class. We should configure that class. Come on, guys. So we should configure that class. Are you listening my statement, guys? We should configure that class directly as a Spring Bean, or we should place context colon annotation config tag. Okay. Context colon annotation config tag. Second one is recommended. Context colon annotation config tag. Context colon annotation config tag, guys. Okay. This tag for required annotation is working before Spring 5.1 version, not from 5.1 version. Not from 5.1 version. Come on, guys. Okay, guys. Not for 5.1 version. Yes, guys. But you should have, if you have a 5.0 version, when you comment this 1001, you only observe this required annotation test. We got error or not? ID is definitely required, boss. ID is definitely required. Yes. Now listen. Example application, boss. Here is my application context.xml, boss. Client application. Yeah. Why at the rate required annotation? Why at the rate required annotation is deprecated? Okay. Yeah, why at the rate required annotation is deprecated from Spring 5.1 version. 5.1 version. Answer, guys. Answer. Number one. Anyone heard about Lambda API? Anyone heard about Lambda API? If not there, in future you will study. When you go for Lambda API, are you going to have setter method or they will be generated internally? They will be generated internally. That time, can I add at the rate? Can I add at the rate required? Can I add at the rate required on the setter method? Can I add at the rate required on the setter method, boss? We cannot add at the rate required on setter method. At the rate required on setter method. Come on, guys. Okay. If the setter methods are if the setter methods are generated using Lambda API, using Lambda API. Number two, using at the rate required. Yeah, there is no need of searching with bean factory container, boss. Bean factory container does not support what? Annotations. If supported also, very lot of configurations will be there. So automatic recognition of annotation, bean post processors are there only with what? Application context container. Anyhow, I said now onward stop working with a bean factory container, start using application context container. Using at the rate required checks whether certain property checks whether certain property using at the rate required checks whether certain property is configured for setter injection or not. Configured for setter injection or not. Come on, guys. But we cannot check whether correct value is correct and valid value is okay, guys. Correct and valid value is correct and what? Correct and correct and value is configured for injection or not. Injection or not. Allows negative number to robo ID though @required is applied. @required is applied. Next one, boss. To apply restriction on, okay guys, to apply restriction on, what is that guys? To apply restriction @robo is applied. To apply restriction on multiple properties, we need to add @required on multiple setter methods. We need to add @required on multiple setter methods. Are you listening my statement, guys? Okay. Now tell me, guys, to overcome all these problems, work with Spring Bean life cycle. I'll introduce. Okay. Spring Bean life cycle. Okay. Init method. Spring Bean life cycle init method. Spring Bean life cycle init method. Is that clear, guys? Come on. Next one. Note. In XML driven configurations, if we configure Spring Bean without bean ID, then the Spring Bean gets default bean ID. That is fully qualified class name #n. Fully qualified class name as #n. Okay, boss. Here, what is that? 0, 1, 2, 3, ... Okay, no problem, guys. We will see the story now. Yes, boss. Like this, we are having in application context.xml. What is this? In application context.xml. In application context.xml, boss. Okay, now listen. default bean ID, default bean ID, com.nt.beans.robo #0 or robo. Default bean ID. Here, what is this? #1. Only first one, two option, guys. 0 or without 0. But second one onwards, it is #1. Okay. Second one onwards, it is #1. As usually, you know that. Okay. Yes, boss. In client application. In client application. com.nt.beans.robo #0. Robo #0. Robo #0 or robo 2. Robo #1 robo 2. Yes, boss. These are the default bean IDs or not? These are the default bean IDs. Okay, guys. Now, yes, boss. Now listen. I would like to give the flow of execution, boss. Now listen, Evan, how this @required bean post processor will work. Yes, now listen carefully, boss. IOC container created, in-memory metadata of Spring Bean XML is generated. Then pre-instantiation of singleton scope beans takes place. Pre-instantiation. Before that, listen guys, context colon annotation config is there na. Total 7 bean post processor class are loaded, instantiated. Before pre-instantiation of singleton scope beans only, 7 number of, come on, 7 number of, because of this one, uh, bean post processor classes are loaded and objects are created automatically. Bean post processors will be recognized by IOC container automatically. How, sir? All bean post processors will implement one interface called bean post processor. Will implement one common interface called bean post processor. By seeing that interface implementation, okay, all because of this tag, 7 bean post processor class objects are automatically created. Now, pre-instantiation of singleton scope bean is done, guys. Okay, done, guys. Okay, bean post processor will be applied for every bean, boss. Suppose 20 objects are created for same bean class or different bean class. For every bean class, this bean post processor will be applied once. Bean post processor will be applied once. Okay, now listen. Okay, from that list, it will take a required annotation related bean post processor and checks in the bean class. Is there any required annotation? Yes, there. How many times? 2 times are there. Then after creating, after seeing the bean class object, after completing injection, it will check whether those properties are having default values or injected values. Okay, those properties are having what? Default values, not the injected values. Then exception will be given. What will be raised, boss? Exception will be raised. Are you understanding my statement, guys? 1 minute. I'll give more clarity. This is the client application. Okay. Number 1, IOC container creation. IOC container creation. Please focus. IOC container creation. Next one, B, in-memory metadata of. In-memory metadata of Spring Bean configuration file. That is B. In-memory metadata of Spring Bean configuration file, B. Next one, C. All 7 bean post processor. Bean post processors. Bean post processors. Loading and instantiation. Loading means class loading. Instantiation means object creation. All 7 bean post processor loading and instantiation, including required annotation bean post processor. Bean post processor. Yes, boss. Okay, boss. Next one. Pre-instantiation of singleton scope beans. D. Pre-instantiation of singleton scope beans. Okay, boss. Singleton scope beans. Next. No, it will search for all the annotation availability, boss. Okay, and completes injection. Completes the injections. Yes, injections are completed, boss. Injections are completed. Next one. Each annotation related. Each of 7 annotation related. Each of 7 annotation related. Bean post processor. Bean post processor uses reflection API to check. Reflection API to check whether relevant annotation. What, guys? Relevant annotation is placed or not. Come on. Relevant annotation is placed or not. Placed or not. And finds only at the rate required annotation is placed on set ID comma set name methods. Set ID comma set name methods. Set ID comma set name methods. Set ID comma set name method. Come on. Okay, boss. Now listen. Okay, now listen. I just want to give one confirmation, boss. I have kept 1, 2, 3. I have kept 1, 2, 3, but I commented this. But I kept 1, 2, 3. So annotation is applied, boss. Required annotation test. Still error is coming. It is going by value. It is going by configuration. It is not going by value what you have assigned. It is going by configuration. Whether in the in-memory metadata that is configured or not. Come on. See, if it is the value I have given 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 should come now, boss. Default value 0 not there. 1, 2, 3 is there. Required annotation should not give any error, right? But you observe it still says ID is required. So it is not going by value. It is going by configuration of property using property tag in Spring Bean configuration file. Nothing but in-memory metadata of Spring Bean configuration file. If someone thinks that it is going by data, please stop thinking that. It is not going by data. It is going by configuration. Are you listening my statement, boss? It is going by configuration. Now tell me here, F goes to RoboBean configuration, goes to actually all beans configuration, goes to all beans configuration, like robo in our example, come on, and checks for @required required annotation based properties like ID comma name are configured for setter injection or not. Setter injection or not using property tag by accessing in-memory metadata of Spring Bean configuration file. In-memory metadata of Spring Bean configuration file. Next one, guys, G. If not found having setter injection configuration, exception will be raised. Otherwise, the Spring Bean class object will be kept in internal cache of in the internal cache of IOC container. Please don't think that for every annotation I will give detailed flow like this, boss. First annotation, I want to make you people to visualize it. Okay, internal cache of IOC container. I think you got a clear-cut clarity, boss. Theory and practicals are matching or not matching? Come on, come on. We are learning something extra, something depth, something what others don't know. So definitely it improves your confidence to face interview. It improves your confidence to join in the company. So once confidence, job will come automatically, package will come automatically. I think you got idea how bean post processors are doing their functionality. Tell me, bean post processors will be recognized first or singleton? Singleton scope beans will be recognized first. First bean post processors will be recognized, then singleton scope beans will be recognized. Before pre-instantiation of singleton scope bean only, all bean post processors will be loaded and instantiated. So how does it knows it is a bean post processor? All bean post processor classes directly or indirectly implement bean post processor interface. Why it is named as bean post processor? Array, it is doing some work after creating bean class object. Post processing, doing something after creating object. Doing something after creating object. That's why they are called as what? Bean post processor. Now listen. Other day I said application context container automatically recognizes bean post processor. I think other day when I was giving differences between bean factory and application context container, I have given one point: automatic recognition of bean post processor and bean factory post processor. So am I doing anything after configuring bean post processor, guys? It is automatically recognized, loaded, instantiated. Are you feeling it or not? Am I calling any ctx.getBean? Am I making bean post processor as a dependent to any other bean? But still it is loaded and instantiated. At least now you are feeling automatic recognition of bean post processor, guys. At least are you feeling it? Automatic recognition of bean post processor. I just configured, or I have written relevant tag, but loading of classes, creation of object, everything is happening internally and automatically. Got the point, guys? Come on. We will study all the annotations, don't worry. Some annotations I'll introduce in annotation driven programming. Some annotations I introduced in 100% code driven programming. Some annotations I will introduce in what? Spring Boot programming. But definitely we will study all the annotation. Okay, now listen, whatever annotations you are learning, try to register somewhere in the corner of the brain. Why? Because to check whether you are confident in latest Spring programming or not, nowadays they are asking, can you list out all the annotation that you have used in your Spring projects development? They are seriously asking this question, boss. Okay, anyhow, every day we are going to use, it will be there in your brain, boss. It's something like this. Initially, bean tag is also new. Now it has become old. Na? So now annotation looks a bit new, but after a few days, it becomes old. You know my statement. New remains new until we make it old. Okay, boss. Now, tomorrow annotation is very, very important. @auto void. @auto void. Without using property tag, without using construct-arg tag, how to go for injections? How to perform injections without using property tag, without using proper construct-arg tag, annotation driven injections. I am going to discuss it. Don't dare to miss that class at any cost. That is very, very crucial, and we are going to see in multiple angles, boss. What is geo, boss? Tomorrow, can you give me one more example? If I write 100 examples, also same story. Geo, first read the document. If I give 100 example, also concept is same. Sorry, boss, I cannot spend same time again on required annotation. If you joined late, please go through the document once. Okay, boss. Right, boss. I think please go through the flow. I think all are clearly mentioned here. All are clearly mentioned here. Is that clear? I hope everyone enjoyed the flow, boss. Everyone enjoyed the flow. Chaitanya, you can learn parallelly. You can learn parallelly or spend some time in the internet. Sonu Gupta, first instantiation injection will happen, then it will search. Because bean post processor happen after creating bean class object. Sonu Gupta, whatever I have given, that is perfect. First create object, then injects, then it will search, because post processor. Okay, guys. Musaddiq, I said, give the list of annotations. People are not listening. I have written why required annotation deprecated from 5.1. This is the interview question. Fine. Arun Kumar, to attend Spring real-time project, Angular or React is required, but nowadays that is part of the project only. Dharmendra, required annotation being post processor only for required annotation, na boss. Only for required annotation. Use your brain, boss. I think this kind of questions coming means you are not listening class, boss. First listen class, then try to judge your knowledge. This is for all annotations, 7 annotations, boss. This is only for required annotation. In this list, required annotation bean post processor is also there. If you apply this tag, all 7 annotations related bean post processors will be loaded and instantiated. What are those 7? You can see that list. What are those 7? You can see that list. One is @required, @autovide, @post construct, pre-destroyed, resource, @web service ref, EasyAB. Some of them are related to JPA, some of them are related to EasyAB. With respect to string, only 4 guys. Required, autovide, post construct, and pre-destroy. Right, guys. Thank you, guys. Have a nice time. We'll meet tomorrow. Don't dare to miss tomorrow's class. Hitesh Raz, you need Hibernate knowledge in order to enjoy Spring Data JPA. In order to enjoy Spring Data JPA, you need to have strong Hibernate knowledge. Thank you. Have a nice time.